Salutations, fellow nerds. I'm Rick Y, the wise guy. And today is December 16th, 2024, and today we're going to jump right into it and just touch on the tragedy in Madison, Wisconsin, where it appears as though 4 Americans were killed in a mass shooting event at a Christian school. The shooter appearing to be among the dead and allegedly a student of the school. Again, I can't verify 100% of any of the information that's just flooding through right now, since everything seems to be remaining fluid. But at the time of this recording, we don't have much information beyond what the chief police mentioned at his recent press conference. The community is reeling and hospitals are shutting down routine medical treatments to prepare for mass casualty events. The anxiety is high, and students weren't immediately evacuated from their schools. The Christian school in particular is named Abundant Life Christian School, where the shooting has, like I said, killed 4 and left multiple injuries. And it's important to come on to this platform and share some advice. Don't make assumptions. Right now, given the chaos and the fear, it's all too easy for conspiracies to come to light. Until we have more information, until the dust settles, it's imperative that we don't jump to conclusions, as this is an ongoing investigation. These are moments that need calm and logic, and it is crucial for us to remember that. But that doesn't mean that we're obligated to ignore the reality. And what I will say is, right now in the United States, it is a fact that the leading cause of death for children are firearms. And in a nation where we have enshrined our rights as individuals to own and operate deadly weapons without much in the way of legislation that prevents those who shouldn't have access to them from doing so. Nor does there seem to be as much motivation, specifically from conservatives, to keep children from being slaughtered in their schools, as there seems to be more motivation to keep transgender members of our society from using a restroom. And what gets me is that we aren't the only nation that actually has legal access to firearms by its citizens. Yet we constantly keep trending as the nation with the most gun violence and the least empathy towards those who are being mutilated in their classrooms. I don't get it. Personally, I was issued 2 firearms in the military, an M4 rifle and an M9 Beretta. It was my sidearm. And although they were tools, all of us were taught the individual components of these weapons and their effects. None of them were issued to us as warfighters without the express intent to kill or incapacitate an opposing force. We didn't build with them. We didn't cook with them. The only exclusive use for this tool, that is the firearm, is to maim or destroy. Full stop. The military found these weapons were the most efficient killing tools at their price. And so they contracted the manufacturers so that they could deploy them into active war zones. That's a fact. Yet we, as Americans, have chosen to concern ourselves with making sure that we don't stop any citizen from having access to these firearms and force our children to have to worry about getting gunned down while they're drinking their chocolate milk right before Christmas. Why? Because the same people who couldn't be bothered to do the least to help prevent the spread of a horrifying global disease need to be pandered to even more. You know, when I was young and Columbine happened, for a brief moment, it stopped us in our tracks as a nation, and we finally explored the discussion of preventing these tragedies. And in the 1990s, a public ban was put on assault rifles. Immediately thereafter, the mortality rate in gun deaths plummeted. I don't know how or why this happened. Maybe it was a coincidence. But later, in the early 2000s, that legislation was allowed to lapse. And the weapons that had finally been limited in their possession and capacity by enraged lunatics or inexperienced children was intentionally allowed to occur yet again. And these weapons were distributed with the greatest of ease across the United States. Look, I really don't know what to do about it either. The Americans who need to actually do something are clearly incapable of being moved on the subject. And unless they're directly impacted by these events, I don't see any of that motivation changing. I've had these discussions with people, and the only consistency is that the people who are worried about their rights being infringed upon are worried that the government is going to come for them. And they're unwilling to change their minds or even worry about the lives of our children. The common thoughts and prayers nonsense and marketing ploys like good guys with guns. They failed. And still, they refuse to even consider doing what actually has been historically proven to work here and other developed nations. And if you think your little 7.62 AK is going to keep your family safe from a tyrannical government that currently patrols the skies with F-35s, that is truly an act of futility and ignorance that I cannot fathom. I know I should probably have made this point earlier, but I am definitely not against changing the Second Amendment to better reflect the tools that we currently have in circulation that are not only empowering drug cartels that everybody seems to be worried about, but they're destroying the lives of our children. I don't mind training and proper policing of firearms. If you want to own a gun and have the right to own a gun or rifle, you go right ahead and prove that you're in need of it and that you can be expected to properly and responsibly store and handle that weapon the way we are in the military. Keep in mind, we weren't allowed to just own firearms in base housing either. There's proper regulations that have to be enforced, even for members of our armed services. They don't have guns in the barracks. If our professional war fighters are expected to hold up a certain expectation in these kind of regards, then why are we expecting every average Joe anything different? Why can't we apply it to everyone? As our children are dying and some of our people refuse to take it seriously. At this point, we need to stop taking them seriously. I can't tolerate this anymore. I was finished letting people tell me their Second Amendment rights were more important than my child when Sandy Hook went down. And I was finished taking seriously anyone who has stood by this deal to this day. It's got to stop. We got to get a hold of this. Because frankly, your joy at the shooting range is not more important to me than the lives of our children. And nobody should feel obligated in listening to you justify your position with nonsense and reckless abandon. Even when the moldy yam was targeted at his own Pennsylvania rally, his supporters would not subscribe towards the need to end this senseless violence. This has got to end, one way or another. And if you don't want to hear it, then get out of the way. I don't have the time nor the crayons to explain how the leading cause of death of our kids being a completely controllable issue. We know you don't give a shit, and personally, I'm done acting like y'all can be convinced. There is no decency in having an unshakable loyalty to letting our schools remain places of violence and gore. And if you actually have any testicular fortitude, you'd actually stand up for those who deserve your protection instead of so freely throwing them to the wolves. I can't help but be disgusted with those who pride themselves as responsible gun owners every time this happens. And honestly, I have nothing else to say. So until next time, peace.